I guess.
Sounds good. Let's call the meeting to order.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda. Any additions or corrections?
I'd like to have a couple additions to the agenda. Brian Pogozinski would like to add the crack filling of roadways to the agenda so they can get started sooner, and he'll get us all the information today. And he'd also, they're having trouble with their electronic boards for construction zones, and he'd like to bring this forward, and it'll fit into this sign budget.
Sounds good. Anything else? Approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as restated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes from last weekend. Weekend.
Motion to approve the minutes from last week.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Then I asked to be on the agenda to just bring up our parameters, and I typed it out, so I'm going to read it actually. Last week, Minnesota County officials received the MCIT bulletin, which stated, the open meeting law does give the public the right to attend the meetings of public bodies in order to watch and listen to the proceedings. It does not guarantee the right to speak at a meeting that is open to the public. If a public body chooses to allow the public comment, the body can set the parameters for those comments. In 2013, when Commissioner Zemeski was chairman, the Houston County Board set the policy for public comment period, which set the parameters for Houston County meetings and states. And I'm going to actually read through it. This is what we all had worked on last year. Speakers, number 1, speakers may only speak during the public comment period. Number 2, speakers must be recognized by the chair. Number 3, each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes per speaker once per meeting. You may not relinquish your time slot on another individual in order to give that person more than their allotted 2 minutes. Number 5, groups desiring to address the county board should do so through a single spokesperson. Any speaker not having opportunity to be heard will be first to present at the next county board meeting. Number 7, matters of individual concern will not be addressed until all administrative channels have been employed, such as department heads, elected officials, or your district commissioner. Matters currently under negotiation, litigation, or related to personnel will not be discussed in this forum. Number 9, personal attacks are not permitted. Number 10, this section of the agenda may not be used as a forum to continue discussion on an agenda item which already has been held as a public hearing. Number 11, public comment during the public comment sessions shall be comment only. The public and the commissioners cannot engage in a debate. Questions from commissioners shall be limited to points of clarification. The board chair may limit the discussion if necessary to maintain order and adherence to these rules. And number 12, the press will be allowed to ask questions for clarification purposes. Something needs to change, and I'd like to make a motion to amend the policy as stated below at our next board meetings after commissioners can review and discuss the amendments. And Char's going to give a copy to everybody, but this is what I wrote. Public comment is limited to one person on one subject, and we can allow one person to share their concerns and state that persons A, B, C, etc. also joins in on this comment. The county attorney has indicated that complaints about Houston County employees should go through the Houston County HR department and should not be allowed through public comment period. Allegations are serious and we want to take them seriously. Unless a report is made and properly addressed, this is a disservice to those who are making the complaint. but it also is a way to ensure that an employee who's being complained against has the opportunity to properly respond if need be. Finally, there could be concerns about where information may be coming from, and we don't want to open up the dialogue that could possibly allow data privacy violations. I think Tess sent us all a new updated data privacy violation. Okay, number 3, as Houston County Board meetings are now recorded entirely, personal video recording will only be allowed behind the presenter desk area and to the side of the room. Please do not move around during the meeting as distracting to all. We could end the public comment period as concerns should go through your district commissioner to address. The board will discuss this in the future along with amendments to our policy. Then moving on, we have public comment period.
Was that,
You want a discussion on it?
well, was that a motion, or you said something?
Oh, I need a motion
She
to bring it
wants
up
us
on next meeting.
Next
Oh,
week,
oh, oh.
she's going to give us copies so we can see.
Oh,
So we can
We
study
probably
it?
should have a second.
Yeah,
Okay, I thought that was a motion, I was like, that's a really lengthy motion, okay.
No,
got it.
it's a motion to bring it up because I want everybody to see what I wrote out yesterday, and I also put it through to Jane.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So-
So it'll be for next week.
Yep, so I'll get you all, or Shark and
Yep,
probably
I will get
all
a copy
copy
out.
to us. So there is a second for it, to put it on next week's agenda?
Oh, to put it
Oh,
on next
to
week's
put it on next
agenda.
week's agenda?
Yes. So, okay, or you want a little more time?
No, I think it's good to put it on next week's
Oh,
agenda.
yeah, to put
Then we
the,
will vote on.
We don't need a motion even, do we?
no, I don't think
Oh,
we,
we just have consensus.
Yeah.
Consensus to put it on the agenda for next week.
Yep.
And
I need to absorb that.
I think everybody, we all have the
It's a
laminated ones.
long
Yep.
statement.
Well, and some of it is redundant because it was in the policy, but,
gotcha.
all right. Okay. Is there anybody here that wishes to address the board? And just state your name and
Michael
township.
Fields, Winnebago Township. The context of the disturbing email between Commissioner Storley and Rick Frank that we were treated to last week makes it clear that the Commissioner considers people who actively resist frac sand mining to be jerks, as opposed to the so-called decent people who presumably want to mine frac sand. 10 years ago, Greg David's father-in-law wanted to build the biggest tire burning facility in North America right over in Preston. The biggest tire burning facility in North America. I'm sure that Commissioner Storley appreciates that she doesn't have to breathe toxic fumes or smell burning rubber every time the wind blows out of the northwest, which is quite often, I might add. So I'd like to remind the Commissioner that many of these same jerks resisting frac sand mining also fought against that tire burner, and in some cases at great personal expense. And if not for the efforts of these jerks, frac sand mining would already be a done deal here, and we'd be dealing with the consequences like they are over in Wisconsin. According to today's weather forecast, the wind will be out of the northwest all day. So when you go outside today after the meeting and enjoy this fine spring air, be sure to thank one of Judy's jerks. Thank you.
Yeah, I took that as a personal attack.
Yes.
And I don't think that should be allowed in the future.
Anyone else wish to address the board at this time? Okay. Yes. Dr. Reichert, must be him. We're running a little ahead of time, so Dr. Reichert, if you want to do your report?
Sure. If you have your PowerPoint and flash drive, just plug it into the laptop.
You guys have the paper copy? Okay, great. Commissioners. Thank you. Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. And so you have the paper copy. We also have the PowerPoint, which basically systematically goes through that. And so I'll just go through the information here. And so this is our staff. I wanted to highlight that we've added another medical examiner, Dr. Peter Lynn. So we have 2 board-certified forensic pathologists. He had been practicing in New York City and Queens for about 6 years. He's a forensic pathologist as well as a cardiac pathologist, and he started back in July. And so he's been a great contribution, comes with lots of experience as well. And so although he grew up and was raised and lived in Queens, he did his residency at Mayo Clinic in quiet rural Minnesota, so it's been a good transition for him. So, you never know what's going to resonate with someone. So anyhow, he's a great contribution to our team. We have our 2 death investigators down here, Bob Cooper and Mike Pellinger, and so you guys obviously know them. They've been in those roles for a long-standing time, but I really can't say enough about their contribution to the death investigation system down here in Houston County, and they've really, on several occasions, I would say, by the nature of the situations, really stepped up and gone the extra mile, and I just really like to commend them in their efforts. Likewise, law enforcement also, for some of the situations we were involved in this year, also I think really stepped up and were excellent to work with, and we really had a very collaborative team approach, and so very positive things to say about how things are working. And again, these roles are really community service roles, and I was just thoroughly impressed by how everyone worked together. Really can't say enough about them. The other members here, we have Monica Kendall, who is with me. She's now the pathologist assistant supervisor, so she's in charge of the pathologist assistants, which are basically like physician assistants, but pathologists. She's in charge of our death investigators as well. And Mary Jo Rowlands, and she's our reporting specialist, or our sort of secretarial administrative support. I think every funeral home director in southern Minnesota knows Mary Jo's direct number. She spends a lot of time talking to folks. And Natalie Campbell is our quality person that helps pull together our numbers. And so that's a very high level look at our crew. So just to dig in a little bit into the specifics for Houston County, we had 72 cases that were reported to us. And so this is good. I mean, we just assume have cases reported to the medical examiner and investigate, find out the basic information, and then either release jurisdiction or figure out which way it needs to be handled. So we had 72 of them that were reported to us. It resulted in 13 autopsies. All of the autopsies that we performed were complete examinations, and so that's in contrast to what can be known as a limited or partial examination, where you would just examine a portion of an individual. We had a number of deaths that were certified without post-mortem examination, and so these typically are the sort of cases where you have documented injury that ultimately is resulting in or contributing to the person's death, but it's often well documented. The classic example is the elderly person that falls, breaks their hip, and then never really recovers. We don't necessarily need to do an autopsy, but by statute, it falls under the medical examiner jurisdiction. And so the number of cases that we basically did not certify, but out of those 72, but had done some element of investigation, were 54. So I think it's good. It provides some checks and balances. And so I'd rather see a high number of those reported to us than us declining to be involved. So this is breakdown by manner of death. And so, as you know, there's 2 categories that were required by statute to fill out on the death certificate. The cause of death is basically how someone died, so that's the underlying disease process. The manner of death is really the circumstances in which the death occurred. And as what you'll see here, which I think is a good thing, is the majority of the deaths that we were involved in were natural deaths. And so we had 10 accidents. We had 1 undetermined death, but that was basically a reflection of us not being able to get more specific information about how the death certificate was signed, because the person died in Wisconsin, but the injury occurred in Houston County, so we brought that individual back to do the examination here. So we did that on a couple of cases where the injury occurs here and they were transported to Wisconsin, died there, they released their jurisdiction, and we brought it back to Minnesota so that we could do the examination and work with our own law enforcement team. So that's a good practice. And then we also had 5 suicides. If you break down the causes of death by natural causes, you see a sort of a smattering of cases. It's relatively low numbers, and so just a few deaths one way or the other will really skew what these columns look like. They pretty much parallel what you would anticipate. Generally, cardiac deaths, as you might imagine, is the front leader on that, followed by pulmonary. What you're starting to see is this creeping up of the neurologic component of it. I'm also a neuropathologist, so to get on my brief soapbox, but I think it's important, that our population is aging, the baby boomers are aging, and I think over the next decade or two, we're going to see that increase as neurologic diseases such as Alzheimer's disease increase in that population, unless we somehow come up with a better treatment or cure for that disease. So that is something that to keep an eye on. I think you'll hear a lot more about that in the future. Unnatural causes of death, and so this is basically things that are putting us into medical examiner jurisdiction. And so you'll see the firearm deaths, and those were related to our suicides. We have falls, and again, those are generally in the elderly population, the broken hip. Poisoning/drugs. Poisoning is a term that is used by the CDC, and it's sort of a public health terminology, but it's essentially talking about drug overdoses. It's not implying that someone was poisoned per se. And then some miscellaneous other categories there. Our accidental deaths, we had 1 burn-related fatality, 1 accidental drug overdose, falls, motor vehicles, and then the other was the plane accident that occurred down here, since that's not its own category. So that's sort of shaping out those numbers. Obviously there's a lot of public health interest in motor vehicle accidents, and so we have the automobile/SUV versus the pedestrian. And so again, the scale bars look large, but these are, you have to look at the numbers there. Those are individuals, so that's 1 person for each of those categories. Drugs, this again is becoming really a hot button issue, as we know. Just a couple years ago, for the first time, accidental drug overdoses became the more common cause of accidental death than motor vehicle accidents. So that was the first time that it occurred in the U.S., and so it's a real paradigm shift. So as we've heard more and more about the prescription drug overdose, the opioid abuse and heroin deaths, and so again, growing interest in that. There's only 1 in this category, so I think that's a fortunate thing. We had 5 suicides. They were by firearms. Suicides usually, the means in which they occur are usually by what people have available, and so it's generally shaped by the circumstances and the situation in which the person lives and what's available. So you live in a place that no one has firearms, you see the same or comparable number of suicides, but it's just not by firearms, it's by other means. Deaths by age, as you'll see here, is this growing population, and the big peak is in the 65 and older, basically, age group, which is to be expected. I mean, that's the one risk factor that we can't really control, and that's a good thing. That's really the demographic. I mean, that's a reflection of the population, reflection of the demographics, so to be anticipated. And that's really a pretty high-level overview of the cases, and I think things from my perspective, going well. We, again, had the unusual incident of having the plane crash here, and again, it was very collaborative, very well handled, in my opinion, and went as smoothly as something that complex could. So for something that's fortunately a rare event, I would say this was handled with expert skills. So anyhow, specific questions, comments? Yes.
I got it. Just a question I'm just curious about. You mentioned you're a neurologic pathologist. In our area, our community, it seems like there's a growing number of Parkinson's-related issues. Do you see that commonly coming through, that it's growing, or is it just seems like it's growing?
So again, when you're dealing with relatively small numbers, a few people can really shape the perception of what that is. But Parkinson's disease or Parkinsonism, basically the incidence of that increases with age. And so as you see an aging population, you're going to see an increased rate of Parkinson's disease. Most people with Parkinson's disease end up not dying from their Parkinson's disease, but dying from their underlying heart disease, because that's what they're at risk for as well. Parkinson's is a very interesting disease. There are some environmental exposures that have been linked to it. Yeah.
Well, I guess that was kind of one of the questions, because my grandfather had it, and a lot of his friends had it. And like you mentioned, that aging population, we all know that aging population years ago didn't have a lot of the chemical protection things, and obviously in the farming community, I know a lot of people have talked about, is there a link between, like you mentioned, environmental things, chemicals, things that a lot of the farmers are exposed to that is making that increase. Now, as that aging population seems to be getting there, it seems like it's becoming more prevalent. I was just curious.
No, I think that's a great question, and there's definitely an association with some toxic exposures in Parkinson's disease. I don't know specifically, about that population, but it's compounded in complexity by the fact that you're also at risk just by age relation.
Sure. Okay.
But so.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Any questions for us or anything?
No, I think we're good for another year. Hopefully we'll make this just kind of a part of our standing, annual presentation, and so that we're all up to date and feel like we're on the same page. But from our standpoint, things are going smoothly. Again, I can't speak enough about Bob and Mike have really done a great job, and they go the extra mile, which I'm sure doesn't surprise you. Law enforcement also, this situation this year, really went the extra mile too. So really a pleasure. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
great. Thanks.
Linda, we're running a few minutes ahead of time. Is the rest of your team ready?
It should be any moment here.
Okay.
I think we are going to have Tim go first.
Okay. Tim has a video he's going to show us as part of the report.
So did this.
What did Dana ask if it was going to be
Can,
a movie?
I'm pretty quick if you want me. I asked if it was good.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, okay, that sounds good, Doug,
Thank you,
because yours is
Commissioner.
pretty routine.
The reason I'm here today, Commissioners, is we're applying for a grant called Towards Zero Death, or TZD. It's in cooperation with Public Health. Seems like I'm getting feedback. I can hear myself, it's kind of weird. The Public Health's grant system is going to refer and require us as law enforcement to join them. She has to have at least one law enforcement office from the county. So with the county decided we might as well be the office. I've talked to all the chiefs in the entire county, and they're all interested in participating. So what they are is these grants are like a 4-hour shift for, there'll be a DUI enforcement, there'll be a speed enforcement, there'll be a seatbelt enforcement, and there'll be a distracted driving enforcement. They have to be signs posted, so we'd put one at, say, coming out of Hoka, from Hoka to Spring Grove, that road, we're going to patrol We have to be in high visibility vests, and you'll know when we stop you for speeding, and they say, well, why'd you stop me? The big sign said, we are doing the speed enforcement. You should have known that. We don't know what it's gonna entail, how much it's gonna entail. The grant application just came out Thursday. So we're going through it, but that's why I had it put in the packet. The day that I asked Shar to put it in the packet, the grant application hadn't even come out yet. But Public Health has to have theirs in by May 29th or May 30th, and ours is June 15th or June 29th or something to that effect. It runs from, I want to say October through 16. So it's a little ways out, but it's something that we have to prepare for. We have to do some training, we have to do some things, but it is a grant like every other grant. We pay the money up front and we get reimbursed. I have a little issue with that, but that's apparently the way, it's been quite a ways for Public Health. But all the cities are in board. They're all overtime shifts, and the grant pays for the law enforcement officers' overtime shift. And again, there are little waves, they're like a 4-hour wave, and there'll be announcements that'll be in the paper, and it'll say what wave is coming and when they're coming. So with the board approval, I do have a resolution authorizing the execution of at least trying to procure a grant. I brought 4 copies. I don't know how many we need, Shar. I'm assuming you keep one, I keep one, we send one in.
Yeah,
So
that should be good.
So the grants to cover road signage and time being out there? Or what, I guess,
the grant is only for, the grant will provide pay for the overtime that the officers will do that.
I see.
It's all it can be used for.
Sure.
Is for the overtime that the officers would be out there.
So, and then just explain one more time, because that's kind of getting in. So, the towards your death, so you have to put signs out by the road and then patrol it by foot? Like,
No.
Or why do you need the high visibility vest? Oh, just because you're out there?
Because you're out there
I see.
enforcing a grant that's,
Yeah.
so we have to post, they have big signs that they post like, road work ahead.
Yep.
They'll say speed enforcement ahead. And they'll be on both
Those
sides.
don't cost us anything.
From what I gather, not at this point, no.
Okay.
We all have the high visibility vests already, so I believe the signs are part of the program.
I see.
And Mary might be able to tell you more about it when she comes in, but.
Oh, I was just curious. 'Cause you're-
I told her she didn't have to come because you would speak for her.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She
they
brought it
run-
up at committee and gave me the forms.
Right, oh, she gave you the same one?
Yes. I gave it to Sharon.
I think she gave you hers.
Okay.
I think they're 2 separate ones.
Okay, we got it.
Okay.
Okay. And
So-
haven't we done this a couple years ago? The
We
same?
never had that, we've always been in towards zero death. That's just
Right.
kind of something that we chose to participate in. Now, we've never asked for a grant. Public Health has always asked for a grant.
Okay.
Now they've changed it where law enforcement has to be related with public health, so they do it cooperatively.
Okay. Did
So-
we do a big project down like that on Highway 52? Oh, it's Rochester to Minneapolis?
Yeah, they do a lot. They're,
Yeah, 'cause it's like a towards your death corridor or whatever. they
Yeah.
call it.
correct,
Right.
excuse me. Yeah, they do a lot of,
So we need
a
a
lot of
motion.
So Doug, does that mean you're gonna be enforcing 55 more, or?
hopefully.
I mean, I go 60 and people are fast.
I don't,
I'm not saying anything. I mean,
Jack used to say every time you come to
Are you
work,
gonna try and bring it down to 55?
that's what the enforcement would be.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's some speed limit.
Correct. Now, the state law does say you can pass. You can go up to 60, but you have to come back
Yeah.
to pass. You can
Yeah,
actually
to get
pass
around safely. right?
but then you should come back.
But there'll be signs saying when you should slow down.
There'll be signs posted.
We all sound guilty here.
I think everybody does.
We do need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the
Grant application.
grant application for the sheriff's department.
Do we need the one for public health?
And public health.
So-
Well, I think we need to go separate.
Will she bring that in?
That'd be good.
She is not. She
She-
talked to
Going through
committee.
you.
She brought it up at committee and I told her that Doug would speak.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed?
Motion for public health to go forward with their zero death grant.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
I don't know if they're the same or not. If they are, you can throw them.
Okay, thank you.
If they're not, well,
And they need all 4 signed? Okay. right, Linda and crew, Human Service Report.
Great, how are you guys today?
Pretty good. Sun shining. It's a nice day.
Yeah, good for once.
I'm actually going to start the meeting. Instead of doing an update, every once in a while I throw out videos of social workers, just kind of as a reminder of why we do what we do. One of those ones I kind of want to show you today, it's Foster Care Appreciation Month. And this is just a short video, about 12 minutes, just kind of on those experiences of kids going through foster care and kind of why we need foster parents and have foster parents out there and available. And I got this and shared this with not only my social workers, but Hiawatha Valley and the mental health workers throughout the region too. I mean, it's pretty good.
Sometimes someone hurts you so bad. It stops hurting at all. Until something makes you feel good. And then it all comes back. Every word, every hurt, every moment. How could you ever understand where I come from? Even if you ask, even if you listen, you do not really hear or see or feel. You don't remember my story. You haven't walked my path. You haven't seen what I've seen. My past defines me. This is who I am. I am unseen, unheard, unwanted. That is what I am. If even I am anything. It seemed like the same thing that held me up, forced me down. The world turned upside down, and order disappeared. Nothing was how it was supposed to be. And a heavy sadness filled my soul. Deeper and deeper I fell within myself. And nothing could draw me out. Trapped in the misery of my life. Lost in the sorrow of my soul. Unable to see the light. Unable to see the dawn. To feel. To hope. To dream. And they found the darkest days of my life kept coming. The blackest nights when my soul never slept. It seemed like it was always nighttime and nightmares, and never morning. And maybe you wonder why, but mostly you try not to think about it, and try to get by, and try to survive. And all the other stuff seems so much like nothing, compared to just wanting the most important things back again. Like wishing you could see your mama's smile again, and hear her sing that one favorite song that always calmed you down. When things were all messed up, or if you couldn't have her back, at least get to take care of your baby brother. 'Cause you know he needs you. He's gonna be so scared all alone. And who's gonna hold his hand and whisper it'll be alright to him? And who will whisper it to me? I know I'm helpless, dependent, desperate, but what happens when those you need the most threaten your very existence? I've heard plenty of promises, and they all sound the same. Push hard enough, and sooner or later, they all prove to be empty. The sun comes up every morning, but do you know where? Each place is somewhere different. It's hard to find east when you keep moving around. But at least it comes. It always comes. I've come to depend on that. And slowly seasons changed around me. And it seemed this time that maybe the world would not be pulled out from under me again. Feet safe, roots starting to grow, little buds of hope forming. Slowly attempting to trust this new life.
All right, let me show you what I have for you. It's your gift.
I wish someone would tell me it's gonna be okay. That one day, maybe, I'll feel normal. That I will always be the one. That I'll have a mommy who will hug me and be strong for me. Because maybe I can't do it all by myself. This, my past, my history, my story, is not my fault. It's not because of me. It doesn't have to be what defines my future. I am lovable. I am worthy of care. And that glimmer of light, it makes all the difference. The glimmers of light give me hope that someday my summer will come.
Honestly, it's fairly well done. And it really talks to those adverse child traumas that kids in placement go through, and how the impact of foster parents, the right foster parent, the right care provider can do so much. And so, something I'd like to share with you guys, just to kind of remind you of what we're doing and you know, the reason we're doing it. So, if you guys ever do want this forwarded to you for anything, let me know. I can get that to you too.
I actually yesterday knew what was coming.
Have you guys been using that in your foster parent training?
I just ran across this one. I sent it to Carolyn, who works on Friday. And so we're going to talk about it on Thursday. We're doing a workshop on dealing with difficult clients, and so we'll be talking about them.
Just brought back a lot of stuff.
No, but it's amazing when you think about you know, the trauma-based research and how the actual removal from a biological family is traumatic in itself, and how that connection remains. It's absolutely unbelievable on how difficult it is, and then you go from one experience to another negative experience, and all of a sudden it actually changes your you know, neuroplasticity and your neural matter and the way you look at the world. It's absolutely amazing the impact trauma has on kids. And the difficulty is to kind of sort of correct some of that thinking and that behavior.
It just
Yeah.
shows they don't bounce back like people say, you know?
No,
It's.
but
it's
they can.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing, it's not just non-kids. You know, there are actual physiological reasons for this stuff happening, based on that history of trauma. All of a sudden we talk about something a little less depressing.
Would that be financials?
Yeah, well, that's on my list too. Actually, I was going to tell you, Region 10 Quality Assurance, what that is it's our waiver disabilities group. And really, it's basically Olmsted and Houston County. So in the beginning of the year, after the 245D standards all kicked in, we're going to have nice 4 little short meetings and revise our standards, and then between about the 3rd and 4th meeting, we got a phone call from the state stating that we had to pretty much scrap everything we've done for like the last 15 years. We had to follow all the state standards, which is a little concerning because, at least for the region, then you can get down and have a little more, how do I put that, a little more detail, a little more contact than somebody from DHS in St. Paul telling us, oh, you have to do it this way or that way. Anyway, what has happened is we've ended up having a few more meetings than the 3 or 4 because of that. Because of all the changes in waiver disability services right now, we have one employee retiring. We added 1.5, and so they're training. And then you have min choices coming up in the fall. I said, okay, I'll be on the Region 10, what do you call that, the council or whatever. And along with that, then now I asked if I would be a proxy they have a state quality assurance council as well. So if someone from Region 10 can't go, then I will go ahead and go for them. It's really quite a wide variety of people on there, but I was surprised at how much Houston County representation is on that board. It was nice. I don't know if you know Dennis Thied, Dennis. He's on there, and then John Jordan, who is a parent, is on there. I can't remember who else off the top of my head. But anyway, it's a good thing to be in because of the 245D statute being implemented, and hopefully then our little old Houston County has a voice. So,
Isn't it hard to have us working, being affiliated with Olmsted County, though? They're so big. I mean,
well, I don't know. Actually,
is it to our advantage?
I think it's to our advantage to be there, and I guess we'll see. I'm kind of a newbie at this part of it. I've been in place for a long time, so I have a lot to learn, and I'm glad to do it. Other than that, Mary, Marshall, and myself, we're working on reviving the LCTS, that's Local Collaborative Time Study. What that is it's money provided by the state, and it's gathered through time studies done by, let me think here, the schools, the 4 school districts are in it, public health, nursing is in it, corrections, and human services has really sort of been a fiscal agent, I think has been our main part. But anyway, in the past, we managed that money a little better. There's quite a fund balance of money sitting there with that, and it's sort of been floating along, managing itself. I think there was one meeting in 2011 and one meeting in 2010. So where they were really active, the last time they were really active and probably had more than one meeting in a year was in 2009. So it's been sitting there for a long, long time. At one point, Beth Williams was the coordinator for it, and so I said, yeah, I would do that. So I'll be the coordinator. And on the public health nursing side, Loretta Lillagraven does pays the bills, does the financial things for it. So, it's a funny concept. She does all the work for it, the financial work for it, yet Houston County Human Services is responsible for the quarterly and annual reporting of it. Anyway, we are going to have a meeting in June 11th, and this will be our first organizational meeting since, golly, like I say, it's been a long, long time.
I think I went to one in 2011. It was right after.
Yep, in May of 2011 would have been, the last one. So we will get that up and running. I know there's an administrative fee that Mary and I, because we are going to do this together, we will split that administrative fee. And then we, along with the voting members of that governing board, will decide projects. We have some organizational things to do before that though, so I'm hoping it's not too long of a meeting for anyone, but we'll get it up and running again. It's kind of long past due. Other than that, the April general ledger is done and in, and we're pretty well right on target. We do have one little timing issue, and I think I brought this up in March too. We had collected a nice size estate in December, and that was right around $100,000. Well, then we got our remittance bill for the state, and we had to pay the state $75,000 because it's 3/4 of it. We keep 25% of that. Anyway, the bill was paid in 2014, but the money was collected in 2013. It creates a funny looking timing difference. It makes the income maintenance budget look like we really have overspent our funds. We have not. It's just this timing issue that's in there. The other thing we have going on this afternoon, and if any of you want to go, you sure can. We have the Human Services Performance Management System. The first group of statistics have come back from that, and its numbers there are some in there from 2012 and some from 2013. I'm really pleased with our county. I haven't sent the report out to you yet, but I will after this afternoon's meeting. This afternoon's meeting is a video conference over at the CJC at 1:30, if anybody wants to go. I think just us three are at it so far, and then they will go and review and discuss that. They've had a series of meetings all month depending on the region and the counties and all that, so they've split it up. And if I would talk about that just a little bit, I was really very pleased, really happily surprised and pleased at our numbers. They judge by, there are 6 outcome measures, and at this point in time, they only have the criteria for 4 of them out. But the first outcome is adults and children are safe and secure. The second one is children have stability in their living situations. The third one is children have the opportunity to develop to their fullest potential. And the fourth one is people are economically secure. And the fifth and sixth ones, like I say, they don't have the outcome measures created, or they're probably in the process. But the fifth one is vulnerable adults experience a quality of life. And number 6 is people have access to health care and receive effective services. So we're doing great, really. And I think what I'll do, instead of going over it all right now, I'll send you guys the whole book, because it really is very worthwhile reading. There's some charts and stuff in there where they compare us to the other counties. We're right in the thick of it, and we're actually really good in some things. We're about top notch. So
you'll email it to us?
Oh yeah, I'll email the whole thing because it's pretty thick. I thought about printing it off, and I thought, nah, I don't want to do that. So I'm good with that.
If we need it, we'll print it.
Yeah, exactly. And you might just want to selectively print some of it. It's really a nice report. I was just real pleased. And these guys, they're a huge part of all that, because they're the ones that are working directly with everybody to make the measures better, finding out our little flaws. And sometimes it's just a checkbox that needs to be checked, and it's like, really, that's it? You know? But, no, our computer systems they have a lot of things to check, so it's hard. The last thing I do want to talk about is the cars. And I talked pretty extensively last time at the last meeting. Do any of you need a handout of this? No? You want me to? Yeah. Well, I made a few, so.
I think you also sent it to us by email. But Linda, one thing, at 10 o'clock, we do have to convene a public hearing, and then we can come back to you.
Should we? Should we do that?
If that's okay with you, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
We have to do that.
Yep, all right.
Rick is waiting here.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you're welcome to stay for the public hearing, and then...
Should we just come back?
And then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
So right now, we need to have a motion to convene the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now called to order.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today we have Steve Motter from Crest Precast in La Crescent Township. And we have, as part of their expansion project, as you all are aware, we have applied for Minnesota Investment Fund financing through DEED and are awaiting final approval from that. As part of the expansion project, we have discussed the tax abatement for the new improvements to their facilities. The projected new estimated market value is $715,270, and the taxes, as are proposed, we would be proposing a 75% abatement over a 10-year period, each of those years being an estimated $6,939. Part of this is to give them the stability and security in order to expand and grow their business, to make sure that this expansion project pays off and is successful for them, and contributing to that. So the county will continue to collect 100% of the existing value of the taxes, and then 25% of the new value of the taxes. So there is still increased tax value. However, we give them a little security to make sure that their project is successful and that they can bid out jobs and get the work and hire the new people, which, and through the DEED application, Crest is committed to 8 new employees within 2 years, and average wages was at, I think, or the lowest even may have been $17 an hour.
That's the average,
That's the
plus
average.
benefits.
Plus, so, and I brought Steve with to either answer any questions that you may have in regards to the project or the business, if you're less familiar with it. One of the things, and I know I've mentioned this before, and one of the great things about this project is that the impacts are not only for Crest and their business and their new employees, but the area contractors and other businesses throughout the county that Crest impacts. And as their business grows, others can continue to grow as well. So, you want to say a few words about the project and your business?
This is our 50th year. I want you to hand these out. There we go. Little propaganda. So this is our 50th year in business, and we're pretty proud of that. And the expansion is really driven by our increased sales. In 2010, we got in the pre-stress business, and that was still in the recession area. During that time, since that time, our sales have almost doubled. I mean, that is just unheard of. We go for years and years and years and try to maintain our own or increase our business 5%, but now we've doubled our sales in the last 43 years. And since that time, we hired some new professional people too. We have a quality control person, we have a full-time drafting guy who makes more money than anybody in the company, even more than my brother and myself. We're about 10th or 11th on the scale, okay, and that's the truth. But our impact is pretty big. Our wages are, I ran it this morning, are $21 an hour of benefits. So we're not a low-paying wage shop. We pay very fair because we expect our people to be highly motivated, highly technical. We have a very low turnover rate. So we're pretty excited. We went through some gross years there where we would hire, anybody that had 2 arms and 2 legs, and now we're looking for people that are experienced and family oriented. I think about 80% of our employees own their own homes. That's a big statement to make. But we see nothing but positive. We started this about a year ago, and I think some of the commissioners came down to our plant, and it's a big step for us because this project is not just $750,000, it's about $1.25 million with the equipment. And we don't like to pay property taxes any more than anybody else. We pay almost $58,000 a year right now. Most of that, of course, goes to the school district. The county doesn't get that much money, let's be honest. School district gets the money, the city gets the money, but this particular project is located in the township because we have enough land there to expand, and basically we're expanding our sound wall business that you see along the freeways to retain sound. We just did a job this week for Sun Prairie Electric Utilities for just over $500,000, and it appears that we got that project. We're nervous that we have to be able to put this product out because now we're maintaining that double volume of sales, and we are simply out of room. Some of the products that we make sit in our yard for 3 to 5 months. I know it sounds crazy, but they sit there because of project delays, or we make it during our off-season, and they don't need it till October. So we really need to expand, and land is at a premium in La Crescent, as you all know, very much of a premium, and it's highly inflated. But we're dealing with that. And we think, again, it's a big commitment from us. Saying 8 jobs is not just, boom, throw it out on the carpet. You know, this is a big deal. The county, in their good graces, in 2008, gave us a flood repair loan, and we're on a payoff schedule till 2018. Very great deal. We really appreciated that. We were devastated at this plant with the flooding, and it kind of put us out of commission. And so we're working with that now. So we have a history with EDA that they know, we're filing our reports and making our payments.
Yeah, just a note on the flood payments too. Crest will probably pay off early because they've been paying more than the monthly payment each month. So.
And our bankers on board, as you heard, well, some of the EDA meetings, the bankers on board with us. And so, any questions from the commissioners, I guess?
Just a comment.
Yes.
I'm just really impressed with the business, the professionalism, everything down there. And it's like, I would be proud to support this abatement as your company grows forward.
It's a labor of love. When you own a business, it's your heart and soul is in it, just like a farm. And we're doing the best we can.
I too am impressed with your business and what you're doing.
Thank you.
One thing you didn't mention, I'm interested in, is your storm shelter business.
Yes.
I know that's not a big thing for you, but I think with the tornadoes and stuff we see around the country, that might be a good project.
Yeah, we showed you some, we advertise, you probably see some retail ads, but the real dollars are in the commercial places. And we just finished a storm shelter for BASF, the world's biggest chemical company, in Huntsville, Alabama, 2 weeks ago. People that went down and put that shelter up, and we just think one leads to the other. We built one for GSI Ag Vens, GSI Ag Vens. I looked them up on the internet, they're all over the world. And we built one for them in Alabama, and then this January we built 3 for them in Assumption, Illinois. And these are shelters that hold 250 people. And we just think that that market is unlimited. I can't really go sell a storm shelter to a school, I think, because of the paperwork. But businesses deal much faster, and that's where we see our growth coming is in the storm shelter business. That's really going to be a benefit to these companies and us to connect. And as they find out about us, and if you guys get a chance, and I got to toot my horn a little bit, go to our website and look at some of the projects under, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. We have a web guy that manages our website, and we do very well with getting leads off of that. It's the wave of the future. We don't even have a catalog anymore. Everything is online. So it's a whole new world, and as I mentioned at the last EDA, who ever thought you could sell precast concrete over the web? I still can't believe it myself. It's unbelievable.
Just a couple of additional comments too on the land. This is the expansion is on land that they already purchased and is under operation as existing right now. And then two, just to comment on their business. And one thing that's very impressive is the diversity of their products. If you really go through and look at everything that they can and do make, they're very diversified. So it's not as though they're putting all their eggs in one basket, but it's a growing market for them. And as their room has been taken up, now that this will allow them to do even more business, bid out more jobs, and continue to grow. So, and then I think, Shard, was there a copy of the resolution to go forward? I don't know if I...
Are there any other comments for the public hearing part before we actually approve it? We have to adjourn the public hearing. But where in the township is it, Steve?
It's 609 Kistler behind the trailer court.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Just another couple little sidebars is we do have some traffic through the trailer court stuff, but we just invested also in a new batch plant. That's what stores your cement and your aggregate, so we're gonna be putting that in across the highway, so we're gonna have less trips through the trailer court, which really pleases me. Because we have to deal with that issue of residential versus commercial. You know, it wasn't our choice, it's just something we struggle with all the time, but we also have another project undergoing, and that's to this new batch plant to get the trucks off the highway. So we deliver now from one place to the other, so.
Wonderful. I'll make a motion that we adjourn this public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we need the motion to,
We need to have the whole resolution read. Okay,
Yeah.
so then I can make a motion. And being part of the EDA and the whole process, I feel proud to make this motion to offer the abatement to Crest Precast for the amounts in the resolution and to follow the resolution.
I'll second it.
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just if I could real quick too, I just want to make a comment that the EDA held their first ever Economic Development Summit at Corky's in La Crescent on May 8th, and we had at least 35 people show a full room, and heard a lot of great comments. And we had Don Weber from LHI was our guest speaker. Just an amazing story that he shared with us as well, and started to bridge a lot of connections and make some new contacts for our EDA and communities throughout the county. So wanted to provide an update for you on that as well.
That
Good
went
job.
well.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, Linda. Now you're going to give us another sad story, right? I got my Kleenex out.
No, it could be worse, I think, actually. I think I have
It's a
kind of
good thing.
a good plan here, hopefully. Of course, you know, if you think of something that I missed here, that'd be good too, because this ended up being, kind of a little bigger project than I thought, but it all works out fine. What I have is, we have 3 leased cars in our county. They're all 2011 Chevy products, so we have 2 Malibus and 1 HHR. As it turns out, the staff really like the Malibus. They don't like that HHR so much. I think it's maybe a little more visibility issue. I'm not really sure. I think that might be a lot of it though. Yeah, blind spots. So anyway, we have 2 vehicles that end up being over miles, and I sit and did the math on the mileage penalty. And if we would continue doing what we're doing, driving them like we're driving them, we end up with about a $40,000 penalty, which really backs us into a wall, and we need to do something about it before that happens to us. So, my next thought is, you know, really there's only one way out of the mileage penalty, and that is to stop and see if we can get out of the lease. So we can get out of the lease for the 2 vehicles. The HHR is fine, so we can let that one ride out. But the two Malibus, I think, well, where I've gone and with what I've looked at, I think we need to turn one in, and I think the other one we need to probably buy out, because one is the one that's $10,250 versus the other one is $10,000. The one that's $10,250 has fewer miles. It also has new brakes and new tires. The other one just has new tires. So I'm not sure about the brakes, but I'm imagining if you had 80,000 miles, we'd all need new brakes on our cars too. Anyway, so if we go down the line and you just look at my math, essentially in order to make it a little shorter here, I just came up with a plan. I would like to, if you look down, I don't know if you have your email with you or not.
Yes.
Number 11, look down there at number 11 point. In 2014, I'd like to terminate the 2 leases. I'd like to turn 1 lease in. And with that, we would end up with a $500 penalty for turning it in, which is a lot less money than paying for that mileage penalty. The other one, I would like to buy that out, and I need board permission to do that. I'm not really sure how this works depreciation-wise. I asked Carol Lapham about that, and I don't have this on here about depreciation, but right now the county has a $10,000, that's their mark for where they start to, they can expense anything under $10,000, they can expense it out, take that expense in the first year. Anything above 10,000, the county would depreciate out, and it sounds like, I don't know what it works out with a used vehicle, but with a new vehicle, it would get depreciated out over 5 years. That is a little to our disadvantage. I checked with other counties how they do this, because it seems like leases are going by the wayside. And the other counties all have higher depreciation limits, somewhere around $24,000, $25,000 is when they start depreciating, so they can expense everything up front, anything under that. So if we do end up either not changing that policy, which is what would have to happen in order to do that depreciating the whole amount out, it's $10,250, we would depreciate it out. We don't get to claim our expenses as quickly, and therefore our reimbursements wouldn't be, we'd get them, but it wouldn't be all up front or in this quarter or in this year. So we would get part of them. However, in the long run, if we could buy the one car, I think we would be, most cars, like I think Justin said before, most cars go longer than 80,000 miles, so I think we would be safe in that.
Well, and I would emphasize, I got on the sheriff's department too for not keeping their cars to 150,000. We have to be cognizant of that we don't turn them in at 80,000 or 120,000, they got another 80,000 to go on them, so
Yeah.
if we bought one, plan on keeping it for a while,
Yeah, well, and the other thing though, we do have to keep in mind is, I know I'm a non-mechanic, and the people who are using these cars they're not gonna pick up on some funny noise, and I know I wouldn't. And not only that, their cargo is pretty precious. They haul foster kids around, they old vulnerable people, or young vulnerable people. They have some pretty precious cargo, so we do want to make sure they're roadworthy, and I'm very convinced both of these cars are. But in order to kind of try and stay within our budget this year and not rock that boat too much, I'd like to buy one, I'd like to turn in one, and then in 2015, the HHR lease comes due, and we would, at that time, buy another car. Okay, so then in the meantime, if we turn one in, what are we gonna do? This is where my compromise is. What I would like to do in order to not upset our budget too much is I would like to go ahead and re-up on a lease with the state for a 2014 vehicle. The reason I say that is we can change our lease terms. So we put 80,000 miles a year, or not, excuse me, over a 3-year time frame on a car. What I'd like to do is lease a car for 3 years, and what that does is it allows then the rotation, so we can then start buying a car a year. That pulls us a third, so we would end up with 2 leases this year and 1 bought car. And then next year, the HHR comes due, we can buy another car and turn in the HHR with no penalty. And then in 2016, we buy a 2016 model, and then in 2017, the 2014 lease would come up, and we could turn that car in and then lease another one. And honestly, with the amount of miles we put on all of our cars, and the problem we kind of are in, we need to work ourselves out gradually out of this problem, but with all those miles, we could honestly use a 4th car. I'm convinced of that. After I had Dory Denstead do a bunch of research, and the mileage we're paying out, I think I told you guys that last meeting, we had like a $20,000 a year employee mileage bill because we don't have enough vehicles. So that is my plan, and actually what I would like today from you would be for you to approve terminating the 2 leases on the 2 2011 vehicles, and then we would re-up and lease the 2014 vehicle, replace the one, and then we would buy out the other lease and keep 1 vehicle. So we would have made our first purchase this year. What do you think?
Hang on one second.
You doing your math?
Yeah, it's something interesting that I was just looking at, so just I almost got it, hang back 1 second.
Okay.
I just think that you've put a lot of research and thought into this, and it sounds like your department has put a lot of research into it also. And I think that shows that, this isn't just something we're pulling out of the hat.
No.
And I think that that's really great. And I know Justin's doing his figuring.
Oh, no, it's not on that.
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead with the plan Human Services is presenting.
One second.
Discussion real quick. Like Judy said, I know you've always watched your budget, so I have no quorums that you haven't looked at this thoroughly. I know you've been in contact with me for, I don't know, what has it been, a month or 2 months since you first brought it up. So I know you've looked thoroughly. The math I was doing was just for fun. I enjoy math, I apologize, Judy. I always do math, but,
Yeah, I like it too.
you know, we were
It's
talking
fun.
about keeping cars.
Yeah.
It's interesting, because you have such a nice layout on how you did this, it made this kind of easy and fun. I was looking at where you said, you know, buying a car and keeping it 3 years, 80,000 miles.
Mhm.
This is what's interesting. So if you buy a car and keep it 3 years at $22,215, divided by the 3 years you have it, it's roughly $617 a month. If you kept that car for 5 years, it drops to $413 a month, so about $200 a month savings.
Mhm.
If you kept it for 7 years, at the rate of miles you're putting on, you're only putting on 166,000, which is still good and still has some value to it. It drops it down to $295 a month. So, I mean, it, you know, so basically just showing that, you know, the longer you keep it, yeah, I know there's maintenance, but even if you took that maintenance at $2,000, the maintenance doesn't make up for the savings on keeping. So anyway, that's the math. It was just kind of fun, since you've got it all categorized really well. It
Well,
made it
and
easy,
and the
but-
reason I did 3 years was because the lease is 3 years.
Right, right.
So I kind of had to try and be a little consistent, but, yeah, no, I like it too, it's fun.
Well, it's just neat to see
I
how
kind
that
of could
all
have
plays
gone
out.
on a lot longer, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to bury him.
No. I just thought it was kind of fun, just an interesting tidbit, but know your plan as far as trying to get, you know, on that rotation. And I know you guys are cognizant of money, and your department's been very good at keeping track of it. I know you don't,
We try.
yeah, you look hard at it, so.
Yeah, and this way, the great thing about this is it messes a little with the 2014 budget, honestly, but not a whole lot.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, we'll pay for the 10,250 up front. However, you know, we'd be paying for that this year and next year. So then next year, maybe, you know, we
Now, let me
build-
ask you one
we
other
build
quick
it in.
question.
Sure.
Is there, and just to cover the bases, is there any way you could go with just 2 cars, or do you have to have the 3?
Oh, you'd pay for it one way, you'd pay for it on the front end or the back end, because you'll pay it out in mileage. We're already paying it out in mileage.
What I'm saying though is, I mean, if you owned the car and you don't have to worry about mileage, if you don't have to worry about mileage penalties, that's one thing. I don't want a 3-car lease where you got penalties and you're gonna rack the miles up, and I understand the penalties, but as far as if you say, okay, we're gonna buy it, then is there a chance we could use the one that we bought and rack the miles up on that one versus?
Oh, that's, yeah, if it's available, yes, you bet. Well, that's,
Linda, how
That would
many
be fine.
employees use these cars?
how many use them?
Yes, it's quite a few, right?
Oh, yeah, well, I tell you what, the social workers use them more than income maintenance workers. However, now with EDMS and all of that going on, your income maintenance and your child support workers have been using them a lot. But what are there, 14 social workers? They use them all the time. And then there's 9, 10 financial workers who end up, they carpool whenever they can, but I know like with social workers, sometimes, you know, if they're out on client visits, they can't carpool, you know, but, well, they're.
So the cars are always being used?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have to plan ahead to get them in for maintenance, and, I mean, you know, we have car calendars. They have to sign in a week ahead to reserve them for the maintenance, and,
And last thing too, like, you know, like I told Doug, I'm fine, and I understand we need cars, we need squad cars, we need to update it, we need other equipment update, I understand. I'm fine with it, but just being cognizant that I would like to see miles be run, if we own it, I would like to see them turned in at 150 plus versus 80,000, we need a new one. And I got an issue with that, so I mean, I'm fine with it as long as we're
yeah.
cognizant that we're gonna keep it for a while.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and as long as it's roadworthy, I'm good with it, but I do think we have a group of non-mechanics driving it too.
Well,
Which
and
is
treat it
kind of-
like your own car, you know, I mean, if something doesn't seem right, get it in, you know, I mean,
Yeah, but you have to have that ability to get it. I mean, like, I really, honestly, I don't know, I'm gonna be in deep trouble if I,
you'll be fine.
yeah, well, you know, I mean, where some of us are just not all that mechanically inclined.
Further discussion, or should we call for the vote?
Oh, we're good. Although I didn't see, could have had a roller skate one here, but
A roller
just
skate?
buy every roller skates.
Oh,
I didn't see that one.
No, I didn't do that one, actually.
But no, I appreciate it. You did a good job. I appreciate you coming in for the
I
information.
appreciate the research and
It's been working a
the
long time.
statistics ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just nothing.
That helps us a lot.
Well, it does, and to be able to see it broke down, I know you put a lot of effort into cutting money where you could, so I appreciate that.
You know, the long-term goal would be to, if we get a fleet, then they become countywide cars and everybody can use them. That would be really nice.
Real quick, I know, kind of off topic, I know Veteran Services was talking about that, like with their van and keeping it so that we could have another, you know, if you had issue, you know, in doing that and having a fleet. I talked to a couple other counties too, and they were mentioning about how it's not necessarily department specific, but county specific, that if there's a vehicle available, you know, you've got your human services one, but then after that, it goes to this department, and they, you know, and getting something where we can be more efficient with our vehicles would be a nice goal. So anyway, go on.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Well, in lieu of time, I'll just talk about one of the things I brought today. In November of 2013, we received a bulletin. It's IRS and SSA, Social Security, updating safeguarding requirements. We've been eating, breathing, living this document since we've received it. With a lot of the programs that the child support and the financial workers work with, we are getting information from IRS, different outside federal hubs, that we need to make sure that we're protecting because it is tax-sensitive information. So we are having to put into place, we will have 2 FTI areas, which is federal tax information areas, that will have signs. One will be the child support office upstairs. One will be the financial unit suite, which is the front desk, and then where the financial workers are housed. Any place that has this information, whether it's on our monitors or our computers, or if we receive paper copies from clients, we need to make sure that that's double locked, so not everybody will have access to those areas. And if they do have access, they do need to be escorted and signed in and out. So we've had to, if you come visit any of the areas, you will have to sign in, sign out, and be escorted to go into those areas. So I just wanted to let everybody know that there are some changes that are coming with this. We have to track documents that come in paper form. We need to track when they come in, who has had access to them, how we store them, how we destroy them. So we have to kind of track the life of our paper documents. But we do also need to look at buying screens for our monitors for privacy, because this not only affects people with no need to see the information, but they're truly looking at if you're not working that case at that moment in time to be able to see somebody else's work. That's how far down they've taken this. So we need to be cognizant if somebody walks in and says, hey, I have a question, they can't see the work that I'm doing on my computer. So and that is something else that we need to look at. And I know we had somebody come in for an estate audit, and this got brought up. So everybody's looking at it. The feds are going to be in Minnesota, I believe it's June 2nd through the 5th, and they are doing on-site audits in Goodhue and Olmsted County, so we weren't picked for that. But we have started our own county policy. We will have an authorized user list, so like maintenance, HR, county attorneys, the people that we see daily will be able to have access and don't have to do the logging in and out every time they come in. So, you know, once we get that done, I can get a copy, so you'll at least have it for your reference.
Sounds good.
So, lots of other stuff going on, but like I said, in lieu of time, we'll just save it till next time.
We need more time.
And if there's anything that you want us to know that you didn't bring up, just feel free to email it to us too, so that we can stay in the loop, because I think it's good for us to get this information.
I can do that. And we are moving forward with child support EDMS. We're set to go live the second week in July with that. So working on scanning and getting everything set up there. So.
That's good. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Brian? Morning.
On the agenda today, recommending approval of class number County right away plat number 56, which is for the reconstruction of County State Aid Highway number 13, just west of the city of Houston. It's for project number SAP 028-996-010. What this is for is a reconstruction of a hill section that had flood damage several different times over the last decade. So we have some state money to do the project, but we need to apply for land declared at this point. So, so I have the right-of-way resolution and the plat. I'm trying to get today for approval.
We'll make a motion to approve the plat for County 13 project.
I'll second.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Brian, Brian, did you know that we did add the other two things to the agenda?
Okay.
So you can stay there.
Yeah, that's fine.
I didn't know if you were in here when we did that.
I was not. These are the numbers for the seal coat bid, the crack fill bid that was.
Thank you.
Right. Wait, is Farmer, they're not Eddie Matthew? Or affiliated with another company? Because their logo on their truck is something, one of the trucks looks similar to somebody else. I was like,
Sure, you bet.
I guess I don't know exactly what their affiliation is.
No big deal. I just saw it the other day and I was like, gosh, that logo looks familiar.
They have some ties anyway. I'm not sure exactly if it's.
Is this the same procedure the state just got done?
Yep. Yep.
Filling cracks?
Is that common with like roads, you know, like 16, I know they're filling and stuff, but having a road that's only a year or two old and filling cracks from the winter, or is it because they just put a thin overlay in it and it's cracking?
It's an overlay. Like the state roadways, what they're doing is they're milling off 2 inches and putting back 4 inches of asphalt.
Okay.
When you have that crack stuff underneath, on the old pavement, those cracks reflect through over time. And usually what you figure is that the cracks going to reflect through 1 inch per year. So 4 inches, you're able to get 4 years before the cracks reflect through. Now the reality is when you have old concrete, the panels underneath rock, and those cracks come up a lot quicker. So the state's trying to do crack filling 2 years after it gets paved. Most of our projects, we mill the asphalt off completely and put new pavement back on. So then you don't get that reflective crack and you don't crack out the right away. Sure.
The airport's getting done too?
Yep, so.
That's from last week.
Yeah, so what these two quotes are, the first one is for crack filling the roadways. And this is for, we're estimating 95,000 pounds worth of tar to fill the cracks this year. We had 3 bidders. The low bid was Four Seasons Maintenance, and they've done the work for us in the past. Like I was asked, it's similar to what the state's doing out on Highway 44 right now. 2 options. One is just to, I guess, line number 2 for $1.51 is to fill the cracks without doing any type of routing of the cracks. The better option is to route the cracks before you fill them. That's at $1.71. Last year's prices for crack filling was $1.91 a pound with routing and $1.81 a pound with no routing. So the cost went down this year.
Why did they go down? That's
We're
kind
just
of.
happy.
I'm not gonna argue.
So I won't question it, that's okay.
Yeah, it went down, so that's
We'll
good.
get that. Okay.
And the second thing that I have here that I'm recommending the board to approve is crack filling out at the airport. This would be the section of the airport that was the runway and the aprons. So the part that we did 2 years ago, that was the entrance area and by the hangars. That stuff we milled off the pavement completely, put new pavement back on. I don't think there's a single crack in that section yet. The apron and the runway with what's out there for the base underneath, we couldn't have done a full depth or full reconstruction project out there. It would have been too cost prohibitive. So we went out there, we just did an overlay. Same thing as what's happening on 44 and 26 and all the state roads, cracks are reflecting through. So we want to fill those cracks and get that, the water out from getting through the cracks into the subgrade and making the pavement fall apart even worse. Cracks out there, we had 4 bidders. B&D seal coating was the low bid at $1.69 per pound. Based on 10,000 pounds that we're estimating is $16,900 on that. We've talked to MnDOT Aeronautics about the cost on this. It's airport maintenance, so we should be able to get some state money in a 50-50 split to do it. They have told us, go ahead, proceed, get the contract in place, get out there and get the work done. And like they like to do on the aviation side, the agreements come in place after the contract's been hired and work's been done. So, again, kind of frustrated that everything comes after the fact on that. But when you look at the budgeted amount, the amount we have budgeted for the roadways and airport is, for roadways is $90,000 in their budget. The roadways and the airport combined, we're looking at $93,000. So by the time you put the state match in there, we're gonna end up being under our budget. So,
Because you're only, if it's a 50-50, you're only talking about $4,500.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you need a motion for that.
Motion for approval and.
And that's to pick the low bidder for season maintenance on the first one and B&D seal coating on the second, or do the?
Yep, that's what we do.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to approve 4 Seasons and B&D coating for seal coating on roads and at the airport.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. The next item is something we're talking about in subcommittee as well. This, I guess, I don't know how the board wants to handle this today, if you want to approve something or take some time to come back and think about things. We have 2 electronic message boards in the county that we use to notify residents of the county when we have construction projects going on. We put the signs up in advance of the project, try to let the residents know that they're always going to be shut down at this, starting on whatever date it's going to be, or if it's going to be intermittent, short-term closures, kind of keep the residents informed. Those message boards were purchased 5 years ago, 6 years ago, from the state for $5,000 for the 2 boards. They were the old style boards. One of them has stopped working for us. We've been trying to diagnose the problem. We've been looking at all the wiring, we've been looking at the control panel. We haven't been able to figure out what the problem is. And the companies that we've been dealing with are, they're saying essentially, whatever the problem is, it's not going to be cheap to diagnose and fix, and they're saying it'd be more cost effective to look at buying a replacement sign. The old sign, they're saying just trash it. So we looked at what's out there for options. To buy these boards new, they're really expensive. So the best option for the county is to do what we did last time and to buy a used board. We can buy 1 used one, and then we don't have a spare. There won't be matching type of boards. One would be LED board, one would be the old flip panel boards. Or we can buy a pair and have a spare just in case it's needed in the future. So we're kind of looking at both options. We look at different brands of what's out there for used. The one brand that's out there is there's a AGCO board that we can get here in the state. It's also there's a company that repairs them in the state. Those boards, you can get a 2002 model for $5,750 or a 2005 model for $5,900. We've been trying to talk to the company that maintains these boards, or that repairs them. Haven't had any luck getting a hold of them, which is concerning to look at buying a board and can't figure out what type of service they have for maintenance. And we believe that this model of board was stopped being produced back in 2006. The other option is to go with Vermac, which they have 2005 models as well for $7,300 a piece, and they have multiple ones available. The Vermac models were being manufactured, this identical model, up until until I believe December of 2013. It was into the fall of 2013. So they just stopped being produced recently, so parts will be available when there is issues for these ones for quite some time. So I've been trying to weigh, is it better to get a model that's not being produced 7, 8, 9 years ago, or is it better to spend a little bit of extra money and buy a model that's been manufactured up until last year? It seems to make sense you'd want to buy the model that was manufactured up until last year for the additional $1,400. But that's an option that, if we want to try to save some money, we can go with the other cheaper model. And this is something where it wasn't on their agenda request initially because our boards were functioning up to recently. We don't know if it got hit by lightning or what happened. So if we get these, the board wants to approve this today, whichever route you want to go, and I would recommend the Veramac. We can get it ordered right away, get them down here and get them set up and use them along County 9 and County 4 as we do our pipe replacements. If the board's not comfortable making a decision today and wants to hold off, we can come back next week or the following week, make a decision down the road. It just delays when those boards get here. Residents are gonna survive and find their ways around the job sites. Once the roadway shuts down, they figure it out in a hurry. So it's kind of the two options at this point. So it's.
And this is within your budget also, correct? I mean, it's gonna make it tight, but.
Yeah, this was not originally in our budget, but.
You should have some left over from
we have some
equipment stuff, right?
We have some inventory on our signing side that, we can let our sign inventory get down a little bit if we need to, and then also from our equipment purchases, that we can get, money juggled around a little bit. I mean, things are going to be tight, but we should be able to make it work in this year's budget.
So you just have there's one that's down, right? The other one's still fine?
Right now, one's down, the other one's fine, yes.
I'd say, I guess, fine, $7,300 and a good used board. I mean, I'm fine with that. Get that piece. I guess my issue is I don't see the need to buy two or to have a spare laying around when you're tying up money for that deal, but I'm fine, if you want, get one to replace one that's broken, I'm fine with that. I mean, you're right, the one that's $7,300, $1,400 more for something that's gonna be regular parts of it. Makes sense. So, I guess I would make a motion to approve purchasing one of those boards at $7,300 to replace the one that is broken. Yep.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, thank you. Did you say that was LED? The new one?
Yes, the new one's an LED one.
So it takes half the batteries to run.
Yeah.
If these new ones
You have brighter
use
image too, then?
8 batteries instead of 16. Well, what is it, LED or
Users.
just, I know it's the bulbs. I'd have to-
But it's the more efficient one than the flip ones.
Yes.
Yep.
So then if there comes a problem with the other one,
Then
then
we'll get
please
another
bring
one.
it back.
Yeah.
and- Yeah.
Okay. And it's yeah, there's
This way
needed.
you'll be able to see the new one if we can get parts for it. If it's gonna be a problem, then we don't need to have to go to another company on the next.
Yep.
Work out.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have, at some point when we go to replace them, to stick with the same
Yeah,
model.
yeah, it's nice to have parts.
Well, this might even bridge us a gap too for 5-7 years or whatever, and at that time, maybe we need 2 more at that time, but for now, to bridge the gap, I think it's a good.
Yeah, these boards were great purchases when we bought these.
Yeah. I thought they would be a lot more expensive than that.
Brand new, they go from 40,000 on up.
Nice.
They're expensive new.
Yeah.
So that's why we went the used route.
Yeah. Wait, for $7,300, if you get 5 years out of it, you go a long time for $40,000. Yeah, appreciate it, Brent. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. While we wait for Tess to come back in, the consent agenda, we had the Section 8 vouchers by county report, we all got that, and correspondence regarding Part 2 of the Eitzen City Wellhead Protection Plan.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All ready to go in now?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Bob Herskovitz. I'm with the Minnesota Historical Society, and this is Sarah Binders, also with the Minnesota Historical Society in the State Historic Preservation Office.
Can you say your name one more time?
Bob Herskovitz, Herskovitz.
Oh, okay.
I was going to just briefly give you a little bit of their background. Bob Herskovitz has 39 years of experience as a museum curator. He has worked for the Minnesota Historical Society since 1987 as its first head of conservator, and since that, 1998, as the outreach conservator. In 2007, he was one of the first 10 people in the United States to receive specialized training in disaster response for cultural institutions. He also was, it's interesting to learn this, that you are have taught numerous disaster response workshops and have worked in many disaster situations, including the 2002 Red River Valley flood and the St. Peter tornado. Sarah Beimers, am I saying your name? Beimers, I apologize, I should have asked you earlier. Sarah Beimers, this is her first visit to our county, I believe. Has over 20 years of professional experience in historic preservation in Minnesota and Ohio, and is currently the manager of government programs in compliance with the Minnesota State Historical Preservation Office. She and her staff are responsible for statewide project review and working with federal and state agencies and local units of government in their compliance with historic preservation laws. And I'm very pleased that you both found time out of your busy schedules to come give us some information, potential information on our historic jail, and we'll turn this over to you in just a moment. I just wanted to briefly inform the board that the Service Master completed its work on Sunday. I did a sign-off on it yesterday. If you would like, at some point later, we plan on doing a brief walkthrough of the facility. And I'm in contact with MCIT as to next steps for them, as well as I'll be bringing information to the board with regards to information you'll need to make a determination whether to raise or preserve the structure. We do not have the structural report back, but we have all indications that it's coming back very positive, and that's from MCIT. We just do not have the official report yet. So
when do you think you'll get that?
I don't know. I thought I would have it by now, Commissioner. So I expect it'll be any day.
Okay.
So having said that,
We're here to answer your questions. I didn't come down with a prepared spiel or anything, but we can answer questions about the building in terms of its current condition, what might be needed. Obviously, we're not contractors, so I can't give you that kind of detail. But we can tell you that, for example, reuse of the building is eminently possible. That's commonly done with historic buildings. The exterior should remain pretty much as it is, but there's more latitude on the interior. So if you needed to rearrange interior in order to make it usable for whatever function you chose, that's doable. I think, as Sarah mentioned a couple minutes ago, we would encourage you to retain the character-defining features as much as possible, the things that make that building what it is. But what happens inside is negotiable, I guess. The last time I was here, where they were still in the process of drying the building, and I know that they had to demolish more than some of us would have liked because of circumstances. But that doesn't take away the historic value of the building. There's enough left, there's enough interior left, there's still historic wallpaper left, although some has been lost. There are still some original floors, and moldings were saved as they had to tear up the floor. So that kind of detail stuff is good. I mean, you can really reestablish the feel, I think, of the building. From a conservation standpoint, really the issue is mold, and that's why a lot of it had to be demolished, because mold started to form, and once that starts, you can't really remediate all of it 100%, so the contaminated materials had to be removed. And Ms. Kruger told us that they also had to remove some of heating, ventilation, air conditioning equipment that was in the building in order to properly dry it. Which frankly is a plus, because if you wanted to redo it, you'd want to redo the HVAC, and you now don't have to demolish it, pay for demolishing that. The same thing with the sprinkler system, that's going to have to be redone, and much of that has been removed as well. Lots of old pipe in there that obviously wasn't up to the task. You should try and maintain the building as much as possible until you make a decision one way or another. I know the discussion is to raise it or to rehabilitate it, and hopefully that the heat can be maintained in the building, and not to have to worry about next winter. There are ways to mothball buildings, and your maintenance people are probably even more knowledgeable than I am in those terms.
So even if it's mothballed, you have to heat it? Okay.
What?
It's harder on a building, correct me if I'm wrong, it's harder on a building to let it freeze all the way and thaw and stuff than just keeping it heated.
Right.
Question for you.
Sure.
I'm a big history buff, love history. And our family's been here a long time, so I see the value of having an old building. I also know that an old building does take a lot of energy, effort, and money to maintain and keep that way. Obviously, looking out for the taxpayer dollars, we've seen what happens. The building sits empty for even 2 years and something happens and it costs a lot of money. I know we can try and reuse that, basically remodel the interior and use it for something else, which I know costs hundreds of thousands of dollars or, to do. So just looking at it from both sides of the coin, if all of a sudden the county looks at it and says, this costs way too much money for what we're going to be able to use this for, there are provisions from the Historical Society that we can, if we needed to, tear that down. I mean, that is an option. If all of a sudden we find that, boy, we just can't justify it or utilize it the way we would like to, that still is an option, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there a procedure that we would follow to remove it from the National Register or anything like that?
There's a couple procedures in state law. There's the EQB rules, which it would require it's in a mandatory category for an environmental assessment worksheet. Demolition in whole or part of a National Register building is a category that requires a mandatory EAW, so that would be a public process that you would need to go through. There is, in state law, Chapter 138 is the Historic Sites Act, basically, for Minnesota, and it instructs state agencies and political subdivisions, of which the definition, as my understanding, includes county and local governments, to cooperate, work with the Minnesota Historical Society for preservation of buildings, for demolition. So
it would come into our office and we would work with you, consult on options. Probably want to see what sort of feasibility studies were done for keeping and rehabilitating, there are quite a different costs, and then costs of demolition, of course. So we rarely see, we don't often see county jails or courthouses in that category, but we provide recommendations, we consult, so it's not, that's what we do under state law, and that's.
Another couple things real quick. If it was an option that somebody came by and said, hey, you know what, we want to buy this, but we want to move it off, does it still stay on the registry if it's dismantled and removed, or does it only stay on because it's where it was originally built?
In its original location.
Okay. And
Sometimes buildings have been moved, depots, railroad depots that may have moved further from the tracks because of new requirements, but they would stay along the tracks. With this, the way the situation of these two buildings are, they were built together sort of as a campus with the jail and the courthouse, that I would see would potentially lose significant integrity if it was moved to a different location.
And then is there grants, state aid, if we said, hey, okay, we need office space, we're going to utilize that and we're going to sink hundreds of thousands of dollars in it? I mean, is there grant opportunities to pay for that, since it would cost the county dollars otherwise?
There are two grant programs. There's state grants and aid, capital grants, and then there are the legacy grants. Also, the building would be eligible to, in the next session, ask for bond money for rehabilitation. It's, once again, that's a third source. It's like capital, the work that's going on at the state capitol, some of it's bond money, some of it's capital improvement, out of operating expenses. So it's common on a large project to have a mix of sources. The legacy funds, once again, is yet another source, and that's eligible as the building currently exists because it's in the National Register listing. Both buildings are in one listing. So even in its current state, it's eminently possible to get significant money for preserving the building, and if rehabilitation is part of that, then, once again, we will negotiate language and what guidelines we would like to see done, but there are potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in just legacy money.
Is that a matching fund, though?
Legacy is not matching. That's just a direct grant. It's not a loan. There's no match requirement.
The nice thing that comes along with that is the technical assistance from our office with historical architects, preservation planners, Bob, and other people in our staff who have different expertise for reuse of historic buildings that come along with those grants.
Our current application, we did match because it's common that there is a match provided and helps move you up the scale sometimes, if you will, but it's not a requirement like the bonding was.
That's a tactical or decision on the applicant. The committee who makes the decisions always likes to see some matching money, although it is not a requirement. They like to see some matching money that indicates a real buy-in from the community, and that it's unusual to see a grant of $200,000-300,000 with no match. It has happened,
But it must be difficult to get that.
well, the Legacy Grants Program is a competitive grant, and we commonly have 2 to 3 times as much in requests for each go-round as there's money. And we're talking, I think currently for the mid and large grants, I think there's something on the order of $4 million available. So, for us to get $8 or $10 million in requests is not unusual. So, once again, if you have some match, that is taken into account by the reviewers and it's to the applicant's benefit.
There's two other points I'd like to.
One other thing, the match doesn't all necessarily have to be cash. It can be in-kind services.
Which may tie to what, possibly to this next point here, is keep in mind that the insurance company, with our policy through MCIT, is a replacement value, of course, with somewhat appropriate depreciation. Depreciation, though, is something that is a discussion that I'm in conversation with them, because some things increase in value. They don't just arbitrarily depreciate just over time. So we understand that one of the things they're looking at, I don't have this officially, but unofficially, is replacing all the hardwood floors. And so they're really, it's looking very positive from us, so that for us, in certain perspectives. We would be, I'm not sure what the bottom line at the end of the day is going to be from the insurance company. However, if you choose to raise the building, you don't get that. You get, I believe it's 50% of the value.
From MCIT, from our insurance.
From our insurance. So all the cost of rehabbing the building, if you will, we don't bear that. They aren't just mitigating and doing the cleanup. So we do have some funding coming forth from MCIT. We should know that fairly soon as well. And the other point I'd like to raise is that a couple years ago, Chief Jailer reminded me a couple years ago, we had a quote for raising the building, and 2 years ago that was at $96,000. Now it's my understanding that includes remediation or mitigation for asbestos, which we've already done that. I'm not sure how much of that bill involved the estimation to get rid of the floor tiles. They weren't friable, so it might not have been that high. I'm not certain how much it would be. Currently, I believe we could be paying upwards to, the bill is yet to come in up to $10,000, but I haven't seen that bill yet. But that would be less. We wouldn't have to remediate or anything like that. We also, during that remediation, I believe, took care of the mercury and the paint. And they have done some work. There's some lead paint left, obviously, in the woodwork that was preserved. That would have to, if you were to save that, dip it or have it somehow stripped. But my question for you, and you may not be able to answer that today, when we talk about in-kind matches, could we potentially use our proceeds coming forth from insurance as a match towards that our legacy application? And that would be, that's just something I throw out. You may not be able to answer that today, but it certainly would make for an interesting possibility.
I think technically you could, however, I can't answer definitively, I guess is the bottom line, because expenses incurred before the grant starts, before it's approved and officially given its authorization to proceed, cannot be used as a match in the grant. So if you received insurance money and you used it to do work now, and in the next grant round, you got a grant, well, the money has already been spent, it's before authorization of the grant, so in that sense, it wouldn't be eligible. If you got money and the work wasn't done until the grant started, then I think it would probably be very acceptable or a qualifying match.
I would assume, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, the board needs to make a decision on what we want to do with this building. And, you know, if you're gonna rehab it, are you keeping it for a historical thing and leave the cells in there and just leave it as a tourist attraction, or are we gonna try and renovate it, or are we gonna rip it down? I mean, we gotta make a decision before we really get too far ahead of ourselves. I mean, what's our goal? You know, there's gonna be costs no matter what, but long term, what's, you know, what's
And what they are,
more beneficial, right, yeah, exactly, and what they are, you know.
I guess I encourage the board to all go through it, look at it, see what it's at now, and just to take a tour of it and get an eye on what it looks like.
It's a lot different, isn't it?
It is.
It's a lot different, and you can see where the temporary walls, if you will, I call them temporary because they were, where it was cut up to make the different space and different usages in there. You have potential for some very large rooms, you have potential for office space with dividers. It's a lot more potential than what you may have been able to visualize before, and that's even with the cells. Some of the things that we can give you rough estimates and have someone come through, but if you're looking for a full use study, the county would need to hire a consulting firm to do a full use study of that facility.
Similar to what we did with Pathfinders, because we did get a preservation plan from Pathfinders.
I don't know that it gave I'm thinking more along the lines of conversion for commercial use or public use or for offices and things like that, that would actually have full.
That's an adaptive reuse study. Right, and we've done that with many, since before we had legacy grants, and legacy grants can be used for an adaptive reuse study for a historic building, and it usually puts together an adaptive reuse team that would be a consultant who would have an architectural history background, but it tends to also bring in someone who has business background and brings people from the community, or architecture, and bring people from the community together. I know they did this in Winona County when they had their own flooded courthouse. They actually interviewed judges, and they interviewed people who used the building and the public, and as they were looking to decide what to do with their courthouse, did a full adaptive reuse study. And legacy, that is one category of our legacy grants, is an adaptive reuse study, and it would probably end up determining 2 or 3 uses that would be viable, and they take into account the economic viability, of course, of the community. That's why it's important to have a team that's kind of diverse of 3 or 4 people, consultants. Excuse me, and when is the next legacy grant round? I think we have a small, or many large grants are due June. I think they just had pre-apps.
The next,
This could probably fit in the small grant size.
well, small grant is
10,000 or less.
10,000 or less. The next one is, I think, in January. But I think it has to be before that. I'm sorry, I have to get that information. But the small grants are, at this point, every quarter, every 3 months. The mid and large, a mid-sized grant is from 10,000 to 50,000. The large is from over 50,000. And that next round would start taking applications after the beginning of the state fiscal year. So potentially as soon as July, August, probably more realistically.
We currently are doing a structural study on this building that we have a small grant for, and so we will be submitting this, we will be prepared, have prepared and submit our large legacy grant for this structure in next month. For that, prior to your next deadline. I don't think we could do anything for the jail prior to the January or the subsequent year's deadline. It's just, there's no way to get it done.
For a reuse study, possibly for a smaller.
Other than the small grants, I'm
study.
thinking of legacy. We couldn't possibly do a large legacy, but the small adaptive
Right,
reuse.
because you need to do that planning in order to have a viable large grant. You have to have a plan in mind.
And the nice thing about the 2 sources with legacy and the capital grants, because they're state bond funds, can't be used for planning documents, but the legacy can. I don't know, the governor's supposed to sign the bonding bill, and there is a new set of funds that will go out for capital grants, and I don't know when that cycle would start. I think in the fall maybe, or winter. I don't know, I can check, but the, legacy can be used for planning documents, capital bond, local aid, can be used for bricks and mortar projects too.
What is the time limit with the insurance, so don't we have to make a decision whether we're gonna get 50% to
I asked
demolish it,
that
or
question.
100% to redo it?
We do need, they would like us to make that decision fairly soon. However, there is a considerable, several months, from what I'm told, that they have before they need to close the matter.
So how much money would we get from insurance on this?
Well, that's what we're waiting to hear from them, and I think that's why they weren't prepared yet. So they've asked to postpone this meeting with you folks until that time. They're not ready quite yet.
Do we have to make any, or receive any bids from contractors' tests on the insurance companies? Is that-
That's all being taken care of.
It is, okay.
So you had mentioned.
Well, it's not, I'm sorry, Commissioner, it's not bid for getting quotes on the cost of repair,
Yeah.
but not bids in response to any kind of work that they'd be doing at this point. Our insurance is for up to the building's insured for up to $225,000. That's not right. Up to
And if we decide to demolish it, we would get.
It's up to $2.25 million. That's better. I had
So if you demolished
2.25
it?
in my head.
Okay.
2.25 million is what I'm understanding our insurance for that building is.
Okay, hold on, because that brings in a new ballgame. You said if we demolish it, we get half of that money.
Now, we get half of what they deem the actual replacement value would be. That's why it's my.
So what we need to do is we need to wait till we get our numbers from the insurance company before we.
That's what I keep,
that's right.
I keep reminding Mr. Conway of MCIT that the board cannot be making a decision until the numbers are there.
Yeah, until we know what we're getting.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at, and when they say make a decision, I remind them, you can't make a decision without facts and figures. It would not be responsible stewardship, so.
Well, as soon as you get any information, let us know right away, so we can discuss it. And,
We gotta get a direction here.
yeah.
And then once you get that information, that's for what they would do with how it's currently configured. They, of course, as what they call the quote, actual replacement value being something that's somewhat depreciated off of what you currently have. But that doesn't mean that you have to go back in and replace this wall this way. I mean, it just means that's what we get for however we choose to configure it.
But I mean, we could get money for that, plus if you had legacy grant, you could have significant amount of money to do something on the interior if we needed to.
And
There's a potential for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That will take
Instant-
all of
instant
that, I'm
money.
sure. Yeah.
I mean, you got 2 grant programs and you've got state bonding money.
Well, I can just see, and this is something probably over your guys' head too, but for the rest of us, with the highway department building coming, there's that option too, Okay, so if we got money from MCIT and we said, hey, if we can't afford the building, tear it down, we get insurance money, that goes towards the highway building, or we renovate the interior, and that could possibly be engineering offices. I mean, there's that side of it too, that is coming down the pipeline that we gotta look at and be cognizant that, this could inadvertently affect that building as well. Right.
A report came out recently that the Tax Credit Act has generated more revenue than the money paid out. So that's those tax rebates actually do not cost the government. They earn money in a sense on that. So it's a net gain. So there's, it's like statistics. You can use them to pose any kind of a solution that you want. It'll say what you want. So,
How would we count?
obviously, we're here because we're in the preservation business, so we're not making any claims of being totally objective.
Sure.
Do you guys have cards that we could have if we needed to contact you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd also like to say that whatever the board determines that it wishes to do, I think it would be wise to forecast, not looking at just today's, what's on your immediate plate, Commissioner Kuzinski, but also forecast 5 and 10-year needs for this county. And the cost of new construction 10 years from now, if you need additional space. When you're looking at costing a project, it shouldn't just simply be in today's dollars with today's. So we would have to be looking, quite honestly, looking forward a little bit. It's hard to look beyond 5 years. 10's almost impossible, but from my perspective, I feel that way. But certainly when you're doing planning for your infrastructure, it's not unusual to be having a 5-year and a 10-year plan out there for what your footprint's going to look like, where you potentially the money's coming from, and the best ballpark cost of that future footprint that you can see and what your needs are going to be. And so I would encourage you to take it from that perspective, and I'll try to supply you with as much information as possible so that you can do that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because for the 4 years that I've been commissioner, that's what I've tried to, been trying to push is it's not today, it's 10, 20 years from now. We know where our taxes are going. Do we have money to do this? Is it financially a better decision? Yeah, you might have it today, but in the long run, what's it cost every year thereafter? What are those incurred costs? We all know, whether it's kids, cars, or anything, it's not the upfront cost, it's the maintenance that's gonna really put you over the end. So that's what I've been trying to push. We need to figure out is, we do have another building project we're looking at doing. Is there a way that we could lessen the expense of that by utilizing this building to suit some of our needs? Or is it something where this building in the future, it may cost more in the long run to have, that we'd be better off not utilizing it in dismantling? We don't know. That's where we got to get those numbers, because you're right. It isn't today's dollars I'm concerned. It's the projected future of where we're going. And we know where our taxes are going. We know where everything's headed. So can we sustain that? And is there a better option? That's where, like you said, we got to figure out what we're getting from insurance first before we can determine.
That is true, and when looking at that, and you're looking at costing out future structures, you have to also look at the life of those future structures. Are you building a 25-year building? Are you building a 50-year building? Are you building a building that has life beyond 100 years, which is hard for us to fathom, but it really does impact your cost.
Right.
And so the cost of maintaining those, whatever that future structure needs to be weighed, and I think very seriously weighed when you're looking at raising a building, and I may sound like I'm promoting one side or the other, but I'm just being very realistic about this. When you're looking at what would the future cost of maintaining even the infrastructure and the foundation and all of that compared to what you have, that's not an easy analysis to do, and I don't pretend to have all the insights on that. But I will raise those questions for you so that you will be able to really feel that you fleshed out all the potential. And before, if you will, throwing the baby out with the bath, better know what that baby might grow into or grow up to be, so that you can weigh that, what you've done for the future. But and we'll see where that leads us. But you're right, we can't do anything without knowing numbers. Not anything. And I'd like to say one thing I've been told more than once, that if the first year here denied, get in the pipe of your projects for these legacy grants, keep going forward. So we'll see what happens with this building this year, but they haven't heard the last from our office yet, proposing that we get more money out of them.
I, like other people in the grants part of our office, I consider part of my job to help you write a successful grant. That's why I'm there, to give you guidance, advice. You make the decisions, but so that a grant gets through the process easily, and then it's decided on its merits, not on its technicality that didn't quite gets
So-
explained.
So have you looked at the grant we already did and what we can do to get a grant? What we could improve in our grant, so it
Well,
gets results? or-
depends what grant you want to go to. Right now, you've had a small grant for a historic structures report that was successful. So I guess you don't have to do much more than you already did on that. Obviously, there's always room for improvement.
Pathfinder structure report is due by, I think we should be getting it pretty much in 8 days, due by the end of next week, isn't it? So from that document, we will be putting our grant proposal together for that June or July round. I think it's the end of June.
For this building?
June
For the
27th,
large-
for this
the large-
building.
Right.
So it was quite a process that we started in January, and we will be talking with you and prior, but that's,
The process for the mid and large grants is that there's a mandatory pre-application.
Okay.
The pre-application essentially is the grant that you intend to apply for, but it's a draft, and it comes to our office, we review it, make suggestions. This needs to be strengthened, you didn't mention that, that kind of thing, so that when you make your final submission, it's a stronger application.
Okay.
Our purpose is not to weed you out, but to weed you in.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
sounds good. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
thanks for taking your time to come here. I appreciate it. Welcome. I know it's a long drive.
It's pretty.
It's a nice day. It's a beautiful day for a
Thank you,
drive.
Commissioners, for your time.
Need anything with the surveyor test? Should be very determined.
Jess, did you have one other item?
Oh,
on-
I'm sorry, thank you very much. Darn it, I left the name back in my office.
Come right forward here.
Thank you. Can you leave one of this stuff in them also?
I'll have to bring that, I'll just go to my office and get that.
We have one more here.
Got it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
No, wheelchair.
I'll be right back, Commissioners. 30 seconds.
Okay, we'll just go ahead with what we finished then.
Sounds good. All right, Tess will be back with the last item on her agenda. We have a 1 o'clock tour of Allen's place. We did have a meeting on frac sand issues, so there's no report this week.
Oh, we just have the deal tomorrow.
Oh,
Are
that's,
you going?
yeah, I'm planning on it.
Yeah, I think I'll be up there as well. so.
Are you going to be? going?
Yeah, I might go and see my sister afterwards since I'll be there, so we'll see.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. We don't have anything on the highway building, I'm presuming, because
No.
Steve's still out.
Yeah, and he was gonna make something, an appointment with Brian, I haven't heard yet, so that's.
Yeah, and he's kind of under the weather right
Yeah.
now. Commissioner reports, Dana?
Had the EDA meeting last week, and that's pretty well been reported on. That's all I have.
This is something, obviously, I should bring up Highway Department. Kurt Roverud called and just wanted to know if the board was still considering his building or not. I said I would bring it up at the next commissioner meeting, if that was still on the table or not. So, and I can bring that up with Steve and Brian, who we talked to. and
Wasn't
stuff.
something unfinished with what he was going to do?
He was talking about trying to get a different quote or something like that, but I haven't heard if he did or not, so.
Did he? Oh, you don't know if he did?
Okay.
So, anyway, that was the
Okay.
only thing I've got.
I was at the EDA meeting also, and I just am really impressed with the amount of services we get through our CETA program. I mean, every time we have an EDA meeting, I keep thinking about this, that we are doing fantastic things now that our EDA is focused on EDA. I think that we're really getting the bang for our buck. I also went to another city and school meeting in La Crescent. We're discussing what things are going on there as far as a new school, a new community center, senior housing. It's just a really exciting time in La Crescent and the surrounding area.
What school is it?
Elementary.
Oh, yeah.
So it's huge. It's huge projects that are going to be affecting everyone, and I think it's good for the county to stay in the loop of what's going on everywhere in the county. And I feel that this is a time when we can make a comment also, correct?
Right.
Okay, I'm repeatedly referred to because of my comment as a jerk. I didn't refer to the people as jerks. I'm upset with that people call our staff hideous. And that's what I was responding to, not their mission, not what they're doing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that to call our staff hideous is appalling. So that's my statement.
And I did not have any extra meetings this week, not for county anyway. But, okay, Tess,
And I apologize, Commissioners, I didn't have this. I was
No,
so
that-
focused on the jail.
no, that's fine.
In fact, I obviously have neglected this business for a little bit, so it just kept slipping off my plate here. We have a very, a jewel, if you will, in the county surveyor's office. As you may know, the county surveyor makes use of summer help with a modest amount of money that they have set aside for this, and they have done this regularly for the past several years. Our surveyor has made it a point that we focus to, in using summer help, that he provide practical experience for those who are pursuing the field of surveying. And has welcomed back, and I will say that again is my error because this is past tense, has welcomed back Sam Kratt, K-R-A-T-T, this summer. He began his work with the surveyor's office as a 67-day employee on May 13th of this year, and receives an hourly rate of $11.45 through June 30th, and of course July 1 it would be $11.62. So at this time, I respectfully request that the board confirm his appointment. Obviously, it is not something that is after the fact. And I would hate to see that we deny him this opportunity, not only because he's come here, but because it's been an ongoing program in the surveyor's office, and I do apologize to them for not bringing it forward sooner. The email just fell off my plate.
I know Dave's been talking about it for a while at the community meetings and stuff, so yeah, we were aware that they're going to be there, but it's a good thing. I know Dave appreciates the help, so.
Well, it really helps the team accomplish the work that they have to do. And they have, a lot of their work's good weather work. So it's, so you really need all hands
I will make a motion to approve or confirm
I don't know.
the appointment to the surveyor's office for Sam Kratt for summer help.
Do we have to say 67-day employee?
Yeah, 67-day summer help, sure.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
I will correct that. As students, they can work up to 100.
Oh,
okay.
But I
So
don't
as a
think there's
student,
funding for that much, but it's up to
Okay.
100.
That's good to clarify that.
and I'll recuse myself from the vote, but all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I can't imagine why you did that. Thank you for your patience on that.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the Claims, Human Services, and License Center disbursements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Pass.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question before we adjourn?
Yes.
Would it be possible, since we're going to be touring, and we have this little slot of time, could we take that time to walk over to the jail? And
Absolutely, that's where
Would
we're
that
headed
work
right
for-
now. We have a little bit of time.
Okay. Okay.
And Char, likewise, I'd like to, I'm going to try to follow somebody and tag along to find out more about passive.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be good.
All right.
Well, I guess we don't need to recess if we're gonna go across the hall, right?
We're still here.
Yeah, we're still in the meeting.
Okay, when do we adjourn? At the end of our tour
At the
today?
end of the tour.
Yes, okay. All right. I'll make a motion, we recess. Or did you?
Well, we're taking out a recess, yeah, we'll recess after the jail.
Reconvene
There and out.
reconvene at the jail. Full history.
Tour the
Tour
jail.
the jail, why we do
Yes.
that. Recess to tour the jail.
Historic jail.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?